being said, let's move on to round number 3. And question number 3 is, in 1984, Steven Spielberg was directly responsible for creating the PG-13 rating as a result of making both Gremlins and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. But which film had the greater impact on the creation of the new rating? I'm not asking which is the better movie. I'm not asking which is the lesser of the two movies. Which of these two movies had the greater impact on creating the PG-13 rating? So Kay, you were, I think we coin cost for you in the last round. Josh, we will coin cost for you in this round. Heads will be Indiana Jones. Tails will be Gremlins. All right. So it is heads. Josh, you will be arguing for Temple of Doom. And Kay, you will be arguing for Gremlins. So Josh had the coin cost. So Kay, you get this one. Go ahead and kick us off. Why was Gremlins more influential in creating a PG-13 rating? Go.
I think it was more influential in creating a PG-13 rating because of how terrifying it is and how well it skirted that ability to still be within the PG-13 rating, but scary as heck. I mean, that has traumatized a whole generation of children and probably their children at this point, because it's a terrifying film, starting with the moment the Mogwais start to populate, which is already creepy, and then just gets scarier throughout the film. So I would argue that that is why it really defined PG-13, especially at its time.
Josh, what is it about Temple of Doom that made the PG-13 rating happen over Gremlins?
I agree with you. I think that's a good opening argument. I think the Gremlins is definitely it's pretty scary. And however, it was supposed to be scarier. It was originally a horror movie, and they toned it down. So it's actually not as scary as it could have been. And I will see your scariness, and I will raise you reality, because Gremlins is a high fantasy film. Now, as kids, obviously, that's fantasy and reality can sometimes, mesh and stuff, and it's not as easy to tell. But it's pretty obvious that's a fantasy movie. It's not real. Temple of Doom obviously has some fantastical elements in it, but everything that happens is something that conceivably could happen in the real world. And therefore, all of the horror and the sort of vivid imagery of that movie not only can stick with you, but it also is a very sort of like, it's more grounded in reality, which makes it even, I think, a little scarier. And also, in regards to the PG-13 rating, and why we're arguing this, is that it is an adventure movie, and it is sort of a for lack of a better word, say fun. It is I would say it is the darkest of all the Indiana Jones movies, in some ways. But it also is an adventure movie. So there's some really dark parts and some scary parts, but you can see the balance there between that and the R. And so PG-13 seems to be a perfect rating for Indiana.
Wow, okay. Indiana Jones, reality versus fantasy. Josh has a great, strong argument to that. What's your rebuttal?
My rebuttal is, if I am putting on a film to just like block out reality and just enjoy a movie, I'm not going to go for something that's based in reality. I'm going to go for something that is just, like you said, high fantasy, super silly, but still super scary. How is it that Gremlins is able to bridge that gap between, funny family film and, oh my gosh, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen? Plus, it's not technically a Christmas movie, but it's also like a Christmas movie. Let's be honest with ourselves. This is a fun film to not only watch just like during the regular year, but also like it should be in your box of Christmas films.
Josh, a Christmas film that is both scary and fun to watch. What's your let's make your final argument.
Well, if we're gonna call Gremlins a Christmas movie, then I think we need to call Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom a Christmas movie. Why? Because it's all about someone who comes in and tries to save people who are burdened with these heavy laden burdens, and they will be liberated and freed because of the heroic actions and the good actions of another. I think that's a good Christmas message. It's not necessarily a metaphor perfect, but it also Also, this is not a category about is this a Christmas movie or not. But the point is that it is a PG-13 movie because it is an adventure movie. Everyone loves Indiana Jones. I defy you to find people who just hate that movie. Not that movie. I mean the series. That movie, again, it's a little darker. But it's a perfect blend, and you can see why Spielberg would do a PG-13 for this. It's something that, like, as a 13-year-old, of course I wanted to see because it's awesome. But there's some heavy parts and some scary stuff. So PG-13 is the perfect Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom rating, even more so than Gremlins.
All right, Kay, final arguments. Josh was kind of wavering there just a little bit in the first half of his final arguments. Final arguments for yourself. What is it about Gremlins that makes it more influential for PG-13?
I think it's more influential for PG-13 because it caters more to children and people in that 13 age range, as to where the messages that Josh is mentioning, while valid, kind of more apply to adults and older teens, as to where PG-13 is exactly that. It's meant for teens and tweens, and I think a little fuzzy little Mogwai is right up their alley. I think that can be evidenced in the popularity of Furbies in the 90s, because that's where the inspiration of the Furby came from.
Ooh, strong closing argument from Kay there. There was one. I mean, you guys kind of went back and forth. Kay, in your first rebuttal against Josh, you had said something about if you just want to go pull a movie off the shelf and enjoy something fun, you're going to go for a fantasy. You're not going to go for a dark action movie. And while that was a good argument, it wasn't a good argument for this particular category, because it didn't apply to a PG-13 rating. Same thing for you, Josh. The first half of your closing argument wasn't very strong. It was a little, you're waffling back and forth a little bit, trying to dance around this whole idea of what is a Christmas movie. And we could argue that Indiana Jones is a Christmas movie. Again, that doesn't really apply to what makes this more influential for a PG-13 rating. But there was one argument that won me over. It was right in the middle, about how the thing that makes something a little edgier is reality. When you get involved in like fantasy, take Lord of the Rings for example. You can chop the head off of any orc or ent or like a fantastical creature, and granted this is more of a modern day kind of a thing, but you can chop the head off of any fantastical creature and it still gets a lower rating. Whereas Gremlins is a fantasy film, and those types of rules tend to be much more lenient when going for a more harsh rating. And for that reason, I've got to give the point to Josh. Josh, you earned this one fair and square. Your first point, your first winning point for Gotta Debate Them Movies. Josh, how are you feeling right now?
Very good. Temple of Doom is probably my favorite Indiana Jones movie, so I'm happy that I won on this one.
Oh, great.
Yay, but you had a good argument. I didn't know how this was going to go.
Okay, this is the first round that you did not score a point. How are you feeling? We've got 2 more rounds left. Do you think you can bounce back? Do you think that you can maintain your lead, or do you think you might have to concede to Josh on this in this particular debate?
That's my official opinion.
Silent? I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Lots of shrugging.
Oh, Shrek, sorry. Your internet connection's a little slow, so we're not quite seeing you in real time.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you like this video, click like. If you really like this video, click subscribe. And if you really, really like this video, click share. Because that is exactly what this dinosaur would want you to do. Roar, roar, roar!